Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Lukesh Kadu, Assistant Professor, Information Technology Department, Sharankar Kutch Engineering College, welcomes you all on the fifth day, session 2 of AICT IST sponsored 1 week online refresher program on developing secure IoT applications organized by IT Department SAKIC. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our esteemed speakers today, Ms. Geeta Gosavi, ma'am. She is a Principal Technical Officer, CDAC Pune. She has extensive experience in engineering and management, research and development. She is expert in leadership and mentoring, test and problem solving in research and development industry. She has done significant study, analysis, capacity building, and implementations in the upcoming thirst area IoT, which leads to the production capability for smart city applications. She is actively involved in stakeholder communications, solution designing, and project coordinations. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining today.
Thank you.
Ma'am is going to enlighten us on the topic of IoT middleware and system design, a holistic view. Now I request Ms. Geeta ma'am to start the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Sure. I'll just share my screen.
Yes.
Is sharing enabled for me, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I don't know, it's not going anywhere.
Ma'am, you can see that 3 dots.
Yeah,
So
I'm just going on that.
One upward arrow is there. You can click that.
Yes, it says that something else is being shared right now. Something is being shared.
You can overwrite, ma'am.
Yeah, but no, it is not overwriting. Discussion today. So it will be a holistic view because when we consider of an IoT application, we have multiple factors which are playing role, starting, I hope, since you have already completed quite a bit of and spent quite a bit of time on board for this STTP. So you might be aware of various layers of an IoT, ecosystem per se. And this will specifically, I'll try to focus on the middleware part of it. So I won't give any great corporate presentation here, but I would just like to brief about CDAC. So as I hope you all are aware, it's a premier R&D organization of MITI, which is Minister of Electronics and Information Technology. So there are two, it branches out into two things. So CDAC is also finishing school. With that, I mean, we have an academic section which is very active in terms of providing very postgraduate programs. And there is also IT&E. CDAC is also an IT&E organization. So IT and enabled services in electronics as well. So it's IT&E organization. So hence we develop multiple solutions which fall into this category. CDAC is very well known to everybody, and hence I have bulleted this particular point of high performance computing because the complete supercomputer thing was laid down by CDAC when it comes to our country, and that is the reason. However, in addition to that, now it has branched out and works into multiple upcoming domains like e-learning, scientific computing, e-governance, which you can see on the image, in the image on the other side of the slide, as well as multilingual computing. So there are various application verticals on which CDAC works in addition to HPC. So there are 12 centers across India with approximately 3,200 of employees, right? So this is CDAC for you all. So just getting immediately to the session outline. So we'll be covering the IoT middleware. What are the layers of an IoT middleware? Okay. And then what are the security concerns and how actually we can, what are the best practices which we can use in order to secure our IoT middleware? I will also be covering briefly about the IoT ethics and what are the ethical challenges when it comes to developing IoT solutions. What are the major worries which we have to look into, and what is the ethical design aspect of it, right? So when we think of designing a particular IoT solution, there are multiple streams which we work on. So these are the things which I'll be majorly covering. So going to the IoT middleware part, this is a very great quote from Jeff Bezos. So if you build a great experience, customers, tell each other about that particular experience. So this IoT middleware is going to give an experience of the complete IoT ecosystem to the end user. So as defined by Gartner, what is an IoT middleware is it is a software glue. So middleware is nothing like in hardware. So basically it's a layer which sits between the hardware layer and the software layer of your system, and it will abstract the complete hardware and software layer for you by providing various APIs, which are northbound as well as southbound APIs, and so on and so forth. So basically it's a software glue that helps programs and databases, which may be on different computers. It helps these programs and databases work together. So its most basic function is to enable communication between different pieces of software. Okay, so that is the most basic function of an IoT middleware, because we are going to have multiple APIs which are going to interact with your southbound interface, that is the hardware layer, and we are going to the middleware should be able to provide APIs for the applications, the end user applications, right? So that is the reason it is known as a software glue. If you see the definition in an Oxford dictionary, so it is a software that acts as a bridge between an operating system or database applications, especially on a network. So for example, we consider the operating system, which is there, right? So this middleware is going to act as a bridge between these two things, and that is how in simplistic way it is defined by the Oxford Dictionary. Now let's see what are the layers of and what is the exact architecture of this IoT middleware. So let's start from the bottom and then go up to the top. Okay, so if we consider any IoT ecosystem, we have a set of sensors which are at the southbound interface. Along with the sensors, we have the network, right? It is similar to the iOS OSI model, which we have the protocols, how it works, and it is similar to that, and they will be lying in parallel with these layers which you see here. So there are sensors and connectivity and network at the bottom. We also have the gateway. Now this gateway is nothing but something which, if you have seen multiple devices in last 3 to 4 days, like the Raspberry Pi, or there are many commercial gateways also which are available, or Arduino and Arduino Uno ASP. So all these things are nothing but the gateways in the IoT perspective. Okay, so the gateways and the network will form another layer. Now what we have is a pure software layer, which are the management services, which will help into device modeling, configuration, management of all the devices which are going to connect to the middleware. And they're also going to help in the complete data flow management, the security control, and so on and so forth. So these are all multiple services will form the management service layer of an IoT middleware. And then what we have at the top are the applications. So basically the end user applications, so which could be many IoT applications related to healthcare, retail, people tracking, surveillance, transportation. You can think of an array of applications in this particular layer. Right, so from the sensors and the connectivity layer, that is the bottommost layer, we have the sensors as well as the actuators, right? And we also have these tags like the RFID barcode, or all the things which are used for identification. And if you see at the gateway and the network layer, we have Wi-Fi, Ethernet, and various other protocols which will help in controlling the gateway. So we could also have multi-protocol gateways. So a kind of a gateway which supports multiple protocols so that it helps in conversion. So these are the things, and these are the layers, generic layers of an IoT middleware. Now, if we try to look at each layer, we will see, this is how I have segregated the layers. So starting from the bottom layer, which is the sensor connectivity and network layer, as you can see, it is divided into, LAN, PAN, it could be PAN, multiple things which we have in our networking sensors and connectivity area. So in LAN we have Wi-Fi, Ethernet, and we have multiple infrared sensors. We have gyroscopes, multiple sensing things which are even, for example, on your mobile phone, the accelerometer, the GPS. So basically this forms the core hardware part of the IoT. Okay. Now we have the gateway and the network layer, which forms the next layer, where we'll have multiple microcontrollers, as I have said about Raspberry Pi or Arduino, which will have some embedded operating system on it, right? And which will help in basically transferring data from the devices, that is the sensors or the actuators, to the applications. Okay, so that is what the gateway will do, and that is the reason it is known as a gateway. And then there are multiple protocols which will also play a role, right, at this layer. As I have said, management and service layer is basically a pure software layer where we can have device modeling. So it consists of multiple, if you think of a microservice architecture, it consists of multiple services which basically will help in catering to all these things which are listed here. It will help you in defining the rule. Say, for example, consider a smart home application. If else, then that, IFTT kind of rules. So this is the layer which will help you do that. It will help in data governance. It will also have some sort of data repository through which the data will be extracted. So all the ETL processes will be taken care at this particular layer. It will help in analytics of the data. So data is something which is important, but making sense out of the data is something which analytics helps into. So these things are handled at the management service layer. And then comes, of course, the application layer, where you could have applications which are on users' handheld devices, mobile phones, or it could be web applications and so on and so forth, which are catering to multiple areas, the IoT use cases, right? Now, since we are focusing on only middlewares here, so when we started off with the IoT middleware development, say long back in 2013 or, so it's 7 years ago. So when we started off with the development, we started looking into what are the existing middlewares which are available in the market. So there were many, and the European Union has many projects in this area. So there were some of the popular middlewares I've tried to list here, like Xively, iCore, ThingWorx. ThingSpeak is, again, I hope many of you have used. It is a very popular middleware which exposes the APIs in order to transmit the data, or even you can use the APIs in order to get the data from your sensor and post and do a lot of operations on the devices. Then there's something called LinkSmart, which we'll be looking into to a certain extent in a few of our other slides. Then there was Butler, and then there is a European Research Cluster on IoT, which also has a middleware. And IoT-A, which you see here, is Internet of Things architecture, which basically provides ARM, okay, ARM, which is nothing but an architecture reference model. So what is this? So this was used as a base when we started off with the middleware. So reference model, right? So when we think of a reference model, it is nothing but it will give you a set of things which your middleware should have. So basically it will list down multiple requirements which the middleware should cater to. And the requirements are listed down layer wise, of course, and you can one by one, you can just imbibe that requirement matrix in the development of the middleware. So it of course has security layer as well, and that is how we have decided to start off with And that is how we have formed the functional architecture of our middleware. And we try to define multiple layers for the middleware. Now, looking at what are the potential threats. Okay, so when we think of a middleware and we think of putting a layer in between to our IoT infrastructure, so we would like to understand what are the potential threats. So one of the most important threat is a compromised IoT device, which of course nobody would be liking. So a compromised IoT device could create havoc in your complete application. There could be leakage and misuse of personal information. There could be a threat to people's physical safety, right? So because say, for example, if somebody is able to hack into your house and is able to control, the water geyser which you have, and is able to turn it on without your knowledge. And what if, you enter the house and accidentally you just turn on the tap of the water, so, and this is just a very trivial example in our day-to-day life, which I've tried to quote here, but there might be multiple such disasters which might happen if the control is obtained by another person. Then when we think of IoT, mostly, of course, there are a lot of unconstrained devices as well. However, the major role play in IoT is of the constrained devices. That is the devices which are miniature, possibly which have small form factors, which have less memory, which are not that power efficient, right? So all these things are the characteristics of a constrained device. So with this kind of devices, these devices are incapable of performing a heavier, cryptographic algorithms. So security or, encryption, cryptography is not something which is new, which we are trying to build from scratch for Internet of Things applications, right? It has been existing since ages, and we just have to, however, we have to think of these things when it comes to a constrained device, because they are having their own capabilities. So how are we going to port the heavier cryptographic algorithms on these devices, right, is a question. Now, most of the IoT applications are wireless. So there could be things like eavesdropping or jamming. So somebody else playing a role of you and trying to gather information from your application, which is an example of eavesdropping. Or there could be jamming of the complete network, right? So all these things cater to the potential threats of the IoT application or an IoT middleware, which is basically used to build an IoT application. If we see the adversary, this is a beautiful image from one of the white papers, so which very clearly states how the scenario works. So in IoT, we are not only looking at the application silos, right? We are also looking at applications which talk to each other or which exist in one common platform. So here you can see at the top there is an IoT server, and there are 3 IoT applications, and there could be many more. What you can see here is 3, like smart homes, we have smart grids, and we have smart healthcare. Okay, so these are 3 IoT applications. There is a dedicated gateway for each of these applications, and over the internet, they are publishing and subscribing to the one IoT server. Okay, which is, of course, you might be very well aware of the pub/sub mechanisms and the MQTT factor of it if you have gone through various IoT protocols. So, excuse me. So now this, as you can see, every application is going to have its own sensors or a set of devices. For example, the smart home application will have temperature sensor, humidity sensor, and many other sensors which play a role in the smart home. When it comes to smart grids, basically we will have this monitoring of electricity consumption at the end user side. In addition to that, multiple things at the electricity board, which will play a role. Smart healthcare for the hospitals, or individual care kind of things, those sensors which will play a role in smart healthcare kind of applications. So now, what if you can see the multiple adversary or the multiple threats which could happen in such kind of a scenario. So here, starting from the left hand side top, adversary. So it acts. What if the adversary acts as a false application attempting to access information which is not intended for it? So see, this is one possible threat which could be posed to the complete system. What if the adversary alters a sensor to report a false reading? Okay, so which could be another havoc. What if adversary monitors sensor readings to track customer usage in case of smart grid application? So the adversary monitors the sensor readings and it will track the customer usage. Now it will create a spoofing sensor to the system. So something which is not a part of the system, and a spoofing sensor is created and it is enrolled to the system. Right now, adversary attacks communication conduit between the server and the application. So the communication network itself is at stake. So every packet which is passing on is something which is being read, right? So these are the possible threats, and it could bring down the complete system. It could bring down all the applications if these threats are not taken care at proper time. So how do we go about it? So if we see to a security taxonomy, so security in IoT middleware is divided into two parts. One is what are the region of attacks and what are the security requirements. Now for the region of attacks, we could have attacks on what? The attacks could be on the entities. With entities, I mean the sensors, the actuators, and so on and so forth, various things which play a role in IoT. Then we could have data, which is attacked, which is another region where the threat could be imposed. And then there is a communication channel, as we have seen here, the last adversary. So there could be a communication channel. So when it comes to entities, the entities, again, we could have attack on the applications, on the middleware, or on the devices. When it comes to data, the data which is already stored or which is being transmitted. Right? When it comes to communication channel, again, it could be the application or the middleware, and the devices or the middleware, right? So these are, because of course, as I have told you, the middleware is going to have a northbound and the southbound interface. The northbound interface is going to be towards applications and the southbound interface is going to be towards the devices. So that is the reason the communication channel could be attacked at these two ends and could impose greater threats. Now, what are the security requirements? So what things are to be taken care of if we have to avoid these attacks? So we should have appropriate authentication. We should have authorization and access control. So these things are of course not new. However, they should be brought into the IoT middleware as a security layer. A security layer should be elaborated into all these things, so that every device which connects to the middleware is authenticated, it is authorized, every user is having their own access control. Then there is a communication channel protection by various mechanisms, like of course we are all aware of SSL TLS certificates and multiple other ways in order to secure a communication channel. There should be data confidentiality. So every time the data is stored in, say, any NoSQL database, which is the major thing which is used in IoT application. So the data confidentiality should be maintained, the data integrity should be maintained. So these are all the security requirements. And this could be called as a security taxonomy, because these are all the buzzwords which you have to take care of when you build an IoT middleware. Now, as I have already told you about this architecture reference model, which is ARM, right? The IoT ARM. So these are the brief layers of an IoT architecture reference model. So you can see along with the multiple layers, what you see in the dark blue on the two sides, the left and the right side, you have the management layer, and on the rightmost side, you have the security layer. So they encompass all these layers, right? And they will cater to various necessities of service organization, of IoT process management, virtual entity, IoT services, communication, and so on and so forth. So these two layers, they also, of course, have interface to the application layer at the top and the device layer at the bottom. Okay, so this is the architecture reference model. And this is how we can build upon the IoT middleware using this. So I'll try to explain every functional group. So every block which you see here is basically known as a functional group. Okay, so starting from the management functional group, so it will help in addressing the interactions between all the functional group. Of course, that is the reason it is named as a management functional group. It will attend unexpected issues like sublink failures, queue overload, and so on and so forth. It will also provide flexibility, that is, handling changes which are required in a use case. Fault handling, that is detecting a failure, some sort of repairs which are required. Right, and then we have the communication hub for all functional groups. So the service organization group, basically. So it is nothing but a set of services. So it is a communication hub. It will map the high level user requirement. That is, say, for example, give me temperature of room number 1, 2, 3. It will map this requirement from a user to the actual service, which will give the temperature. Okay, then there are virtual entities which are resolved and bound to IoT service functional group for process execution. So these are the things which are done by these two functional groups, that is management and service organization. Moving on to the other functional group, say IoT service. So basically, these are the services which exist, and the service organization will basically manage these services. So service organization is used to build the services and applications on the top of IoT. Okay, and IoT services are basically used for discovery, lookup, and name resolution. Right. Now, for the virtual entity, what are virtual entities? So any physical device which you have, when it enters into the middleware layer, or basically when it enters into the virtual layer of an IoT, it is identified as a virtual entity after it is given a specific unique ID. So the virtual entity will help in discover and lookup services that provide information about the virtual entity. At communication layer, I don't have to reiterate, as we have already seen, there are plethora of technologies, and the security layer is in order to address the security, trust, and privacy. One more layer, which is the IoT process management layer, will integrate various business processes, which will provide extensions to various industry standards. Say, for example, you have OPC or OPC UA, or you have other industry standards which you have to bring into your system. So this is the process management layer where you might have to, some work might be involved. It provides additions and extensions to other industry standards. It relies on the service organization group in order to map abstract processes to the concrete devices. Right. So that is what the IoT process management group does. So you have some, I'll show you some other slides where how this security layer was further elaborated in our IoT, middleware, in order to have multiple sub layers which will handle the IoT security taxonomy. Okay, now this, as I have shown you some popular middlewares, this is one of the middleware which is called as LinkSmart. Okay, so just to have a comparative study, I have bought this particular diagram here, where you can see again the network and security layer on the right hand side, which is going to have this BGW, which is a border gateway. Border gateway is BGW. So it is IoT border gateway, so which plays a major role in security. And for networking, you have the broker. which of course you are aware what a broker is. And then you have this physical devices at the bottom, and you can see the nomenclature there, like the device, IoT device gateway, you have industrial, because this LinkSmart was basically for the industrial kind of an application. That is the reason IGW, which is the industrial OPC gateway, is provided, is given at the bottom. And then there are multiple provisioning, data management, and so on and so forth. And for visualization, there are tools like Grafana and Freeboard which were used, which provide amazing visualizations. Okay, so this is getting further to this LinkSmart and what this BGW is. So you can see here you can see on the border gateway on the left hand side, and you can see an autonomous IoT system on the right hand side. So of course, an IoT system is going to have some REST APIs. It is going to have an MQTT broker and some WebSocket app as well. So there is an OpenID Connect provider, which is again a free and open source implementation, which you can search for and which can be used into the IoT middleware for security purpose. And then you have this Redis, which is a small DB, which will store which is used for authentication. And authentication is nothing but it is going to have the key value pairs right into it in order to authenticate a particular device or a particular user to your system. So everything which comes, every IoT autonomous IoT system which connects to the LinkSmart middleware is going to go through this structure of security. Okay, so it is this border gateway is something which sits at the border, and it will basically every traffic which comes in and goes out will be monitored by this border gateway and will be authorized, will be authenticated by this border gateway. Okay, so every external interface is going to go through this. Let's elaborate it still a bit. So this LinkSmart border, let me reiterate that this is one way of implementing security into the IoT middleware. So like this, I have just bought this to provide you an example. So like this, there could be multiple other ways in order to secure your IoT middleware. Okay, so border gateway, which can authenticate and authorize access to HTTP, MQTT, and WebSocket services for the users. So that is the main role which is performed by the border gateway. What is this OpenID Connect, which I have told you, which is an open source implementation? It allows clients to verify the identity of the end user based on the authentication performed by the auth server. Okay, so it allows to obtain basic profile information about the end user in an interoperable and REST-like manner. So it serves the purpose of authenticating the user. So these are various technologies which you can see in this image. So the OpenID Connect implementation in case of LinkSmart was done using Keycloak and Auth0. So basically authentication authorization provider, if you want to have a local deployment, you can go for Keycloak, and if you want to have a cloud service, you can go for Auth0. Okay, so these are various open source implementations which are available, which can be used for in adding security layer to your IoT middleware. And of course, there are things like Let's Encrypt, which helps you in creating a TLS certificate. And for the key value pairs of the tokens, as I have already said, for the cache access tokens as key value pairs, there are databases like Redis, which can be used. So this is basically the IoT middleware which we came up when we went through multiple IoT middlewares and tried to have our own functional architecture. So that's the general thing. We have devices at the bottom. After that, what we have is the gateway, and the top of it we have communication layer. What spans across on the right hand side is the security layer, which will have authorization, authentication, identity management, key exchange and management, trust and reputation. Okay, and what you have on the left hand side, there are multiple layers. So we had this event processing, notification and alerts layer, then the service organization layer, which as in IoT ARM, you have seen the service organization in a similar way. Inside it had sub-layers like the IoT services, the service resolution layer, which will resolve a particular service request. Service composition layer was basically in order to concate two services. Say, for example, give me the temperature and the humidity. So these are calls to two different sensors. However, the user does not bother about the call the way he gives. So that is the reason the service composition layer will provide an abstraction and will concat these two services and will give the expected result to the user. The management layer was used for the project management, device management, and of course the user management, right? So this was the brief middleware architecture. Now let's see a few of the technologies which can be used in order to secure the IoT middleware. So we all know about AES, right? That is the Advanced Encryption Standard, which is a very popular, technology. However, AES CCM. So this version of AES is basically the operation mode of Advanced Encryption Standard, AES CCM, and it is specially used for constrained devices. Okay, so this is what you have to identify, because as I have said, the constrained devices are constrained. They are going to have a small form factor. They cannot run the heavy algorithms, and that is when such kind of things will play a role. So AES CCM is meant for that. It helps in privacy and authenticity. It will, by default, it is provided with ZigBee, one of the very popular protocol, IoT 802.15.4, which is very popularly used in smart home applications. So this is where this particular technology plays a role. And then, of course, we know about TLS, which is transport layer security. It is again connection-oriented client-server communication. It helps in privacy, authentication, and integrity. Internally, it uses AES, which for symmetric, and RSA and the asymmetric, right? And by default, it comes with HTTPS. So it is important to have the certificate from a CA when you have any IoT application being built. Now, when it comes to OAuth, as I think we all every day today use OAuth in some or the other way, when we either download some application from the Play Store and we want to authenticate it with our Gmail credentials or our Facebook credentials or possibly a LinkedIn. So what plays a role here, because you are using, it helps you use the same username and password. So that is what this OAuth does. So it is open standard authorization. It helps in accessing the resources only to the extent which are allowed by the owner. So that is the natural thing when you press the button, when you tick allow or press the button allow. It helps in, again, authentication and authorization. Right, so these are the things which are essential, and some of the technologies which can help make you the middleware secure. Okay, now if we see the comparison chart of various middleware systems which are available today, and a few of them, as I have told you, you can see here Hydra and LinkSmart is also listed here at number 6. And Open IoT is also listed here. So there are multiple. On the left hand side, what you can see is a set of middlewares, popular middlewares, which are there. And what you see on the y-axis are the various requirements which your middleware should take care when it comes to security. So you can see requirement number 3, right? So that is 5th from the left, which is requirement number 3, which is nothing but authentication is taken care in almost every middleware. You can see a Y there, right? However, you can see after that, you can see requirement number 7, right? Which is requirement 3.2, which is secure device identity is only taken care of in LinkSmart. And also, yes, and I think, yes, it is only LinkSmart and of course Webinos. So there are 2 middlewares which help in doing this. So see, there is a lot of scope when it comes to securing the IoT middleware. So there are only 2 middlewares which cater to this requirement, which should be there. There are certain requirements like anonymous identities, attestation, summarization and filtering, which are not taken care by any of these middlewares. When we see of context-based security, it is again taken care only in 2 middlewares, which is, I think, in and NOS. So this is how we need to identify what all are the requirements of what all are the security requirements of an IoT middleware, and we need to cater to all the security requirements to make our middleware robust and to make the IoT application less susceptible to various attacks which are possible. Okay, so these are various references which were used in order to deliver you more about the IoT middleware and its security aspects. Now, moving on to the next thing, we will be looking into IoT ethics, which is the next very important thing, because it is important to ethically build an IoT application. Right, building an IoT application and making business out of it is one aspect. However, ethically building an IoT application is something which is very crucial. So ethics means knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. Okay, so it is as simple as that, and that is what we are going to see in few of our upcoming slides. So there are multiple defining features of IoT. So this is a list of various defining features. So one is ubiquity and pervasiveness. So when we say IoT, it is ubiquitous, right? So IoT is nothing which is newly introduced today or even newly introduced 10 years ago. It has been there since years. When when Kevin Ashton coined the term of IoT, and when small miniature devices were already there. So there is, if we see at various layers of IoT, right from devices, right from protocols, they are not new. They didn't come up in last few years. They were there. However, today they are just being mapped in one umbrella, so that we are able to make sense out of it and we are able to build an application out of it. That is what we are doing today. So these things are all ubiquitous and very much pervasive. Like everywhere you can see the reachability today. If you try to map IoT in your day-to-day life, just sitting right at the place where you are sitting, you could write multiple applications just by sitting at one place around you, which you would like to be IoT enabled. Okay, then miniaturization and invisibility. So more and more sophisticated solutions we want for IoT, more and more is the miniaturization. Okay, so that it is directly proportional, and that is the reason things are getting invisible day by day. Then there is a lot of ambiguity and ontology because the data which is generated out of it is going to be huge. So the semantics which we have to make or the meaning which we have to make out of the data is going to involve a lot of work, right? Now, identification is another key aspect of IoT. Then what comes is the connectivity, mediation and autonomous agencies. Embedded intelligence in multiple sensors or multiple devices which are going to play a role in your IoT solution. The seamless transfer of data, distributed control, big data, of course, and unpredictability and uncertainty. So these are some of the, if you think of any IoT solution, you could think of these keywords, right? So these are some of the defining features. Now, when it comes to ethical challenges in IoT, there are certain things which we have to look for, like who is the owner of this IoT data, which is retrieved by the sensors. So who is the owner of the data retrieved by the sensors of the objects which are connected to IoT? Does anybody really have an answer to this question, right? So who is the owner of this data and how to control accessibility? Today, even when we use a mobile phone, when the multiple sensors in our mobile phone are used for crowdsourcing or are used in order to by Google in order to see how slowly we are moving in a traffic, and accordingly, show it on their Google Maps that this particular area is flooded with traffic. So who is controlling the data and who is the owner of this data? Don't you think after buying a smartphone worth some thousands of rupees, you think you should be the owner of the data, and somebody should, at least consider your permission. Of course, the permissions are asked for. However, then we are bound to it, right? It's a lock which is created for us. It's a sort of deadlock. So it's still a question that who is the owner of this data, how to control the accessibility of this IoT system. Then other thing is IoT only for experts? There is a great digital divide. There is a set of people who can talk for hours on IoT, and there is a set of people who, though they are using it to a certain extent in their lives, don't even know that it's an IoT. And there is another set of people, if you think of rural areas where people are trying to develop some smart solutions already for the smart villages and all, they don't even have power, uninterrupted power. Then the next level could be the uninterrupted internet supply. Though Jio has revolutionized the whole thing, however, there is a great digital divide. So is there no coherent legal and democratic frame to delineate the limits of information sharing? It's a question, right? So there's no legal frame which has been decided neither by the government or neither by any of the standardizing bodies or any of the agencies which will say that this is the limit of information sharing. This much is the information which you can obtain from a particular user, which you can obtain from a particular application. There is no limit on that. So that is the reason, enforcing the property rights on information, ensuring the access to the information. And so these are all going to be at the ethical challenges when we think of an IoT application future. Today, India has started taking some baby steps in terms of adopting these things, because now we have these smart cities which are coming up, and slowly you will be seeing the penetration of IoT devices and IoT applications in your households as well. So that is the time when we have to think of this, because there have already been waves of revolution against the IoT applications in foreign countries, and which we'll see in some of our next slides. Okay, so one of the challenge is the economic incentive for data protection of the user is not directed to the user. So forget about the permission being taken for the data and so on and so forth, but is there some economic incentive which is provided? So the economic incentive for the data protection is limited to only businesses which are creating the IoT applications and devices, right? It never comes to the user, who is also a major contributor. Then there's a lot of incomplete information on the consequence of the data disclosure. So the user is not completely aware about what are his privacy rights and what will happen if if he says allow on this particular button. And so there's a lack of transparency, and there is a lack of transparency in terms of what are the consequences if I do this particular thing. So this is where it's going to be quite challenging in the coming years. Okay, so and it should be looked into. There is too large information space about the consequence of data disclosure. So the complete set of needed information to make a rational choice could be so large that the user may not be able to access the IoT service in an effective way. Okay, so because as we know, the information space is huge, and there are, for one particular IoT application to run, there is a set of information which is required, and hence making a rational choice of what to share and what not to share is going to be difficult. Then there are psychological biases. For example, for example, I would state an example here where if, so many times we have been told not to connect to public Wi-Fi, public hotspots which are available, which may not be secure. However, anything which comes free of cost is always something which we would like to use, right? So that is true with everybody of us. So anything which is given free of cost, we tend to connect, we tend to use. So there is a very good slide which we will have next, which again, talk about this psychological bias. So let's come back to this when we go to that slide. Then there are trade-offs between business needs to collect and process data and rights to privacy. So what I mean by this is between the regulatory bodies, which are the public and the private sector, which are the governing sectors. So they may support the balance on one or the other direction of IoT. However, these things are so dynamic that there is a great trade-off, right, between how the data should be collected from the end user and what are the end user's rights. So these are never, as I have said, they are never clear and not mentioned in black and white. Then the cost of implementing privacy enhancing or data protecting solutions. So the cost of implementing this, who is going to bear that cost, is again a question. If we have to implement these solutions, which are privacy enhancing technologies, which is PET, if we have to implement these solutions, whether the user will pay for the service, are you going to put the overhead on the user that if you are using this, you have to pay for it, or is the government going to bear the cost, or who exactly, or is the service provider going to bear the cost? So this all things is unknown and should be governed in the frame of legislation. Then again, the accountability, that is who is going to be legally accountable for the user's data is again a question. Online or offline identity. So it's difficult to separate the online information from the offline information, and the linkage can generate to privacy breaches. So even your physical address of your house, of your office, or your telephone numbers. So nothing is separate these days. So there's no again delineation between these things. And as I have already spoken about digital divide, I need not reiterate it here. Then conformance to regulatory frameworks. So implementation and conformance to regulations in the context can be hampered by two factors. So the speed of evolution of IoT is faster than the regulatory process. Okay, so the IoT is evolving, so you can't sit back and just wait for the regulatory framework to come up and then decide on what you would like to enforce. So even that cannot happen. And there are multiple systems which are already deployed, and they may require significant rework or replacement or recall of the IoT devices, and which might again be very much expensive. So these things, that is adopting an ethical framework as well as developing IoT solution, should actually go hand in hand, or in fact the requirement should be stated in such a way that the regulatory framework should be ready much ahead of before we start developing the actual IoT solutions. And then the support for the dynamic context. So the use of IoT services and devices and the processing and storage of personal data may change, right, depending on the context. Now, when I talk about delineation, so you can see here we are talking about IoT here. However, it involves so many things. It involves future internet, it involves mobile computing, ambient intelligence, cloud computing, big data, and these cannot be separate circles. They are all overlaps. So there is no clear boundary which is being defined, and we have to deal with, we have to across all these domains, we have to work across all these domains, adopt various technologies which are there in all these domains, and still we have to address the need of security. Okay, so let's see for what a layman expects when he thinks of an IoT solution. So to treat fairly all persons regardless of such factors as race, religion, gender, disability, age, or national origin. Okay, respect the privacy of others and honor confidentiality. So these are the basic mission statements we could say when we think of an IoT application. And then should we assume that our lives and our behavior are being monitored at all the times? Or are we monitoring the lives or specific aspects of our lives of everyone to reduce the risk of each of us? So what exactly are we doing? Well, I have already talked about all these things, that is social justice, divide, trust, the blurring of context, agency, autonomy. Now, let's see each of these a bit in detail. Okay, so social justice and divide. So the human society on the whole follows a lot of social rules, manners and etiquette. So the problems arising from unwanted data transfers and processing may lead to a lot of distress and even legal appeals as well. Digital divide naturally leads to knowledge divide, and there are special needs of people. For example, the children or the elderly people, they need some special kind of, though you build an IoT application for these set of people, it is important, or we could also say, talk about the differently abled people. So when you think of any application, you have to think it becomes a mandate to think of these people as well in the IoT application. Say, for example, earlier when we were building a smart navigation application, there is an advanced technology blind school here in University of Pune, and it became essential when one of the visitors from there visited our campus, and we could not test the smart navigation application with that visitor because there was a digital divide. Our application was not catered to the needs of blinds, and that is when we found that other than the people like us, what is important is for them to cater to these kind of applications and to make these kind of applications available for their needs. And then we started adopting various responsive web designs and various other guidelines, which are like GIGW guidelines and so on and so forth. We started adopting them while developing an application, the mobile application as well as the web application and the application as a whole, so that we could improve the accuracy of the application, because in navigation you cannot guide a blind person with a slightest inaccuracy, right? You have to have an application which is completely accurate. So this is what is the digital divide about, and this is the social justice which we have to look into when we build an IoT application. Yes, so the trust. So we have no knowledge of what information is actually shared with and with whom. So there are the trust negotiations, so credential exchange in order to obtain the service or the resource. We have to exchange our credentials, the username and password. So as I have stated earlier, India is taking baby steps, and slowly there will be multiple IoT applications which will be coming, and you might be having as a smart grid application, if it is adopted in India, we'll be having our meters being replaced by smart meters. However, when the Dutch government tried to do the same initiative in Netherlands years ago, so the smart meters were considered as spying devices by the population there. Okay, still more details will be given in the upcoming slides. So, there was a lot of revolution which happened, and a lot of resistance was there from the people in Netherlands when the meters were being replaced. Blurring of context, so mediated environments, that is the kitchen, the living room. So when we think of a house, okay, when we think of a house, we have a lot of the everyday environment itself. So we cannot define that kitchen is a separate part. It's one single house. So there is a blurring of context. So everything is connected to everything, right? So there is no clarity in terms of, we cannot say that this kitchen sensor will be monitored only by the wife and will not be monitored by the husband. Of course, we are going to use one single application for the whole thing. So this is what I mean by blurring of context. So whether are we, taking care of privacy? and taking care of the context of every individual when we think of these kind of applications is again something which we have to look into. Yes, so agency is the social contract between people and objects. So objects act and decide in invisible way on behalf of human users, right? So as I have said, when it comes to a virtual environment, it becomes a virtual entity. So it is true with the sensors. It is true with multiple users as well who are authorized to an IoT middleware. So once you become a virtual entity, your decisions are being taken care. And tomorrow, when we think of adopting things like machine learning and so on and so forth, your decisions are going to be in the hands of the objects, or the things which you call them as, which are human agents basically. So these are all the AI agents which are going to take actions on your behalf. So the actions are not fully controllable by the users. So who is the agent? Is it the user or the object? So we should have ways of overruling or opting out from the default settings. Yes, so this is what I was talking to you about earlier when we were talking about psychological biases. So when somebody tells you that we want to implant you with this, the person tells another person that we would like to implant you this RFID tag on you, and the person responded saying that violates my rights. However, when he was told that we want to implant this tag which has got a cell phone, which has a digital camera, and which has an MP3 player, the person was bubbling with joy and was completely ready to have that particular tag implanted, right? So this is the psychological bias which exists. Now, when we think of another thing called autonomy, so to discern the key components of informed consent, you need to understand the ethical issues of research involving human subjects. So the principles of autonomy, beneficence and justice are basic to these ethical issues, and they merit your consideration. So as the more you miniaturize things, the more you want to implant things into human body. So that is the time, if you think of a smart healthcare application, tomorrow we are going to be in an era where you will have some chips implanted in your body. So that is the miniaturization which we are going to achieve in coming days. But this smart object can be perceived by the user as ordinary object, and that violates the principle of informed consent because it could not be an ordinary object. So this is the difference, or the thin line which we have to draw between the informed consent and the ordinary object understanding by the user. Okay. Now, what are the major worries when we think of the top 5 things which the consumer might fear, which will be misused by the cyber criminal? So we have, this is just a small statistics which I found interesting, and I thought could be a part of this particular discussion topic. So when we see India, which is of course an area of our interest, you can see the credit and debit card information is susceptible to 80% can be misused. Up to 80% it can be misused by the consumers or by the cyber criminals. Passwords could be 77%, personal emails 70%, the national ID number, that is the Aadhaar, which is very well coming up now, 69%, personal photographs 69%. So you can see other variations across various countries, and this is how the fear, the major worries. So what are the actions, preparedness, that is, what are the actions which we should take in order to keep the information on the connected devices private? So what we should do is the left hand side, the blue one which you see is, that is next between orange and green, is nothing but India. So in India, we should start changing the passwords regularly. We should change the privacy settings, avoid 45%, up to 45%, avoid using or logging into public Wi-Fi access points. 37% avoid storing sensitive or classified data on the devices. So these are various actions which are essential. And turn off internet enabled functionalities when not actively in use. So if you have a Wi-Fi in your device in your house, and if you're leaving the house for 10 to 12 hours, it is good if you turn it off, rather than giving layover time for somebody to hook in and do some eavesdropping and so on and so forth. It's good if you turn it off. So these are not the steps which we cannot take, right? These are very trivial steps which can easily save a lot of challenges and a lot of worries for all of us. So the advantages of, let's see what are the advantages of ethical design in IoT. So it will reduce business risks for investments in products and services from legal perspective. It will help supporting businesses in long-term relationships with consumers who want to buy ethically framed products and services. It will help create a society where people feel good and where people will feel relaxed about using IoT with relatively high trust, okay, and will keep the transactional cost low. Then more solid data access with no little drive for people wishing to opt out. Okay, so these are the advantages. When we see the policy recommendations, so one is transparency, so vendor regulation and certification. So it is important that the government or the regulatory bodies should come up with a policy framework for IoT. If we are thinking of IoT in the upcoming years, where the vendors who are vendors in terms of those who are manufacturing the devices, as well as those who are the service providers for various IoT applications. So the openness of IoT technology vendors about the functioning of their products, it is important they tell. It is important there is a regulatory body which will examine these products and will be openly, telling what exactly the product is going to do if you adopt the product in your IoT ecosystem. There should be establishment of certification systems where the IoT products will be certified, good to use, trusted, and so on and so forth. A certification which will cover relevant values, example, user privacy, user autonomy, system security, system reliability. It will help people to establish trust. And the access should be regulated. So it is necessary to regulate access to IoT in a way that allows every citizen to access it, and there is no digital divide. There should be transparency of public information. So it is important to understand that the IoT technology in its broader form, okay, this will address the problem of this knowledge divide, which is again the sub-factor of or which is the other version of a digital divide. A comprehensible information on the overall working will something which will help, should be available and which should reach to all the citizens. Okay, and a lot of research should be encouraged, which possibly could be in the security domain or various other domains of IoT, with purposeful programs which will help in identification of solutions to various issues, and the research on societal aspects of IoT can also be stimulated. Now coming to IoT device certifications, I should not just talk about what we should do, but I should also tell whether there are things which could help us do that. So IoT consists of ever increasing number of consumers, commercial, industrial devices, sensors, and so on and so forth across the globe. So there are multiple devices which are internetworked and are termed as things. So we should have, so there are labs like ICSA labs, FCC certifications, which will help in certifying these devices, which will help in quality checking of these IoT devices and products. Now, there is another interesting policy-based approach, which is known as SecIT, which is open source implementation of how we can create a complete secure ecosystem of IoT solution development. So it is a set of, so what is a policy? If we try to define it, it is a set of principles and rules adopted and implemented within a digital architecture or device, and regulating their behaviors in their relations with users, their expectations and rights. So this is nothing but a SecKit. It is a policy-based approach. You can see here it has multiple, it has its own architecture where you can see the IoT system at the top and how the policy adoption takes place. So there is a preventive enforcement which will help in allowing or denying, and there are policy decision points, of course, at the bottom, and then policy enforcement points as well. So this is a framework which can help regulate many things in an IoT system. So when does this policy enforcement PEP embedding happens? Either it happens at the design time of a device, when the libraries are being written, runtime instrumentation during code injections or aspects, hooks. So all these things are the areas where the PEP, that is policy enforcement points embedding, is going to happen, and the usage is regulated through profiles. I'll show you the UI of a SecKit. So the profiles are sets of policy configurations, rules that specify various conditions. That is, if this then that kind of a condition which will enforce the policy templates, and these profiles should also be activated. Okay, so let's see in few. So I'll explain each of this one by one. So SecKit is again an open source implementation which you can download and try to use it if you are building an IoT middleware or if you are building any IoT solution. Okay, so the policy decision points receives event notifications from policy enforcement points. It evaluates the security policies. In response to the signaled events, it will reply with the policy enforcement message, okay, for tentative events, or reactive enforcement message for behavior executor for actual events. Okay, so with reactive, I mean is a response is to be given, okay, to certain things. So there are different branches for that, and they are embedded in IoT system using standard techniques such as custom libraries or runtime instrumentation. So you can have some custom libraries being built which will have these profiles activated, and you can embed it into your IoT device during runtime instrumentation and so on and so forth. So the structure, how it works is ECA, which is event, condition, and action. So the events are nothing but the activities in the IoT ecosystem. So that again, it is categorized into two parts, the actual events and the tentative events. So the actual events are the ones which have already taken place, and the tentative events are the ones which are about to take place but have not yet started. And the conditions are a set of rule, policy, and enforcement. And the action is an intended step which is based on the configuration. See the UI. This is the GUI of SecKit. So you can see here there is a rule model, which the rule model is the window which is open, where whether the event, condition, and action are clearly defined in this rule model. So you can see the access heart rate, which is a tentative event. So what should be the behavior for that? Whether it is authorized in the smart home. So you can see deny and allow kind of an authorization which can be set using this particular tool. Okay, so this is a very useful tool which can be used in order to define the rules in in order to prioritize things in the IoT. Now, how this SecKit takes a role if we think of all the regulatory bodies and if we think of our country as a whole. So this is a tentative model or the tentative architecture which has been given by SecKit, that say for example, if there is a government body or some authority, and on the left hand side we have the generic citizens, employees, there are various certifying bodies. So, and at the bottom we have IoT system, we have SecKit, which will provide various profiles to the complete IoT ecosystem. And then we have the IoT device or the system manufacturers. So the IoT device or the system manufacturers will provide a model which will go through the SecKit layers, and it will be tested for that. The profiles which are necessary and which should be followed by these IoT device or system manufacturers are given by the regulatory bodies or the government. Okay, so they will provide the profiles which can again be written into the SecKit model. The profile validation and certification is, again, there is another authority which will do that. And once these all things are, through by this SECIT model, they will be given to the IoT system, which is there at the bottom. Okay, so this is how a policy framework can be built in order to support the ethical design of IoT. So I think that brings me to the end of my presentation, and these are the references which have been used. My email ID is listed here in case of any further communication. Yeah, I would like to end it here. In case there are any queries, I would like to take them.
Thank you, ma'am, for such a valuable session. Some couple of queries are there, ma'am,
Sure.
from participants.
Yes, sir.
The question is, if the heterogeneous devices are used to deploy in IoT applications, then how this middleware supports these heterogeneous devices?
Yeah, see, that is the main role of middleware, is it to support the heterogeneous devices. Say, for example, the middleware is going to have a gateway layer, right? So the gateway is nothing but a multi-protocol gateway, as I have already told, which will cater to, which basically can talk multiple languages. So, and it can do the transformation, say from HTTPS. If you see a I think you all are aware of constrained application protocol, that is CoAP, right? So say, for example, CoAP works on constrained devices and there is HTTPS on the other end. So the gateway will do the transformation from CoAP to HTTP and so on and so forth. So that is how the middleware is going to have a set of APIs which is going to talk to all these devices. So that is the main purpose of middleware, is to address the heterogeneity. So that is one of the statements, which is one of the objectives of middleware, is to address heterogeneity. And how it does that is by holding various APIs which will be able to talk to all these devices.
Okay, ma'am. The next question is there any middleware technology in a cloud computing architecture?
Yes, ThingSpeak itself is on cloud. It is hosted on cloud. You have IBM Bluemix, which is already hosted on cloud. So middlewares are meant to be hosted on cloud, so that we could handle such big data which is coming up. However, our middleware was a native deployment. But most of the middlewares you will find, there is a middleware from Altizon, which is also there on cloud. So plenty of middlewares which you will find today in the market are hosted on cloud. Even many of the ones which I have named, though you can create a native deployment of these middlewares and do some sort of trial and errors. But yes, a few of which I have named are there and are hosted on cloud.
Okay, ma'am. The next question is there any evaluation parameters for IoT middleware?
Yeah, see, so as I have said, we had decided our own evaluation parameters because as I have said, we use the architecture reference model, which had a set of requirements which the middleware should take care of. So I could say, if you want just a few parameters to be listed, one thing is it should cater to heterogeneous devices. The other thing is it should be able to understand multi-protocol communication, and it should be able to, provide plug and play for various devices which connect to it. It should be able to expose APIs for various applications, irrespective of what the application is. It could be a smart healthcare application, it could be energy application. So it should be something which should be generic. So these are few which I can just spontaneously tell you, but it could form a huge checklist, and I think you could refer to IoT ARM, which has the complete documentation in terms of various parameters which are listed, which you can use for evaluation of your middleware.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is there any authority who controls and coordinates the ethical and legal issues of IoT?
And that is what I think I have already mentioned, that we have to take steps towards it. Even the government, or there should be some regulatory bodies which can be formed in order to have this policy and legal framework, because there are standardization bodies. In case of India, we had GISFI, which was the standardization body which tried to bring a lot of standards in terms of which were specific to IoT. But other than that, there are no regulatory bodies as such which could regulate things.
Thank you, ma'am. That's it from the participant sides, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for conducting and delivering such a wonderful and informative sessions on IoT middleware. Your presentation nicely covers all the points like IoT middleware, best practices to secure IoT middleware, the ethical and legal issues in IoT, as well the IoT devices certifications, which really help us, all the participants, to develop a secure IoT applications. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us today. And on behalf of SAKEC IT department, please accept this small token of appreciations.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Dear participants, the feedback attendance link is posted in Q&A sections. Please fill that feedback link. And your next session will start at 3:30 p.m. sharp.